Well, after 5 knight d4, 6 castles, another possibility for black, rather than just taking the bishop, is to try to, well, I don't know if exploit is the right word, but try to make something out of its development there by playing a6, hoping perhaps to gain time by kicking it around. It's quite feasible to drop it back to c4 now. In a recent game, I actually put it on d3. And what happened is, I think, quite intriguing. Black played e7 to e6. White played e4 to e5. Same advance we saw in the Polgar game. And black chose to complete his development as follows. First of all, knight takes knight check. White took back with a queen. Now d7 to d5, which once again was taken en passant. Black took with the queen, and naturally enough white chose to complete development by fianchettoing his queen's bishop. There aren't that many weaknesses or problems in the black game, but white is slightly ahead in development, and this, after one or two not 100% accurate moves from black, actually turned out in his favour. Black played knight to e7, developing. White played bishop b2, developing. And there are ideas of knight e4 in the air, or maybe even knight b5 in the air. So black took the sting out of that by playing first of all bishop d4 check, h1. Now drop the queen back to c7, again to avoid problems with knight e4. But white's next move gives the advantage, a bit of a surprise for black, but it's an example of how to look for tactical possibilities when you're ahead in development. b3 to b4. And if this is taken, then white of course replies with knight b5 with a terrific initiative. So black in fact just castled. White took on c5. Black recaptured with the queen. And white simply played rook a to b1 with a slight but clear advantage in development. And we've been following the game Plaskett Bates, which accompanies this commentary. And if you have a look at it, you'll see that things developed rather quickly into a decisive edge for white. In this line, after 6a6, instead of dropping the bishop back to d3, another pretty viable alternative is put it on c4. This actually happened in the game Plasket-Kronas from Reykjavik, 1992. Kronas being the Greek board one. And play developed d7 to d6, d2 to d3, e7 to e6. Now white took on d4. Black recaptured with the pawn, and white dropped the knight back to e2. The subsequent middle game involved a lot of manoeuvring and contact between the two armies before black finally cracked and made a blunder about move 25, allowing me a big advantage in pawn structure, which I converted into a win. But if you look at this structure, you'll see it's pretty similar once again to the game Short Gelfand, which we look at, and possibly even more favourable here than there, because black has wasted time with the not too purposeful move a7 to a6. The F4 Sicilian has various other names. It's called the Larsen Sicilian, the Santassia Sicilian. In the United Kingdom, one of its best known headings is the Grand Prix attack, because it's been used on the weekend tournament circuit with tremendous effect by, well, probably first of all in the 1970s David Rumans, and then people like Mark Hebden and Julian Hodgson, both now Grandmasters, in the 80s. The Grand Prix attack in particular is perhaps associated with the deployment of the bishop on c4 and a kingside attack from white based upon a gambit, usually a gambit, of f4 to f5. This is particularly effective if, from the diagram position, black plays d6, committing himself to d6. Now comes most often bishop c4. One of the significances of black's move order is that he will now be one tempo slower in organising the thrust e6 and d5, since he's already played. d7 to d6. Well, the attack associated with this deployment is not to be underestimated. Look at this game, for example. Knight c6, castles, e6, f5, a characteristic gambit. It's not forced, there are other ways of playing with white, but we'll just look at one game where it worked very quickly, very well. Black chose to take back with the e-pawn, the developing move d3. Knight to f6, queen e1, another standard manoeuvre. The queen's coming over to h4. Black castles. There's the queen development. And it's already an automatic attacking build-up for white. It would be wrong, of course, to talk about a forced win, but just look how dangerous it can be. This is a game where Jan Timman played the white pieces in a game for the Dutch Championship, 1978, against a man called Ballion. Black played knight d4. White carried on with bishop g5. And the pieces are massing in front of the black king. Bishop e6. Exchange of knights. And white now played the surprising interpolation e takes f5. With a terrific attack. Clearly, if black were to take on c4 now, we could play the nice in-between move, knight to e4. And the black king's castle comes tumbling around his ears. Black is in a bad way here. If he takes back with the pawn, simply knight d5 leads to a lovely position for white. In the game, he actually chose to stir things up by taking on c3. Timman took back on e6. And white has the bishop pair and quite a nice attacking formation. d5 was played, looking for tricks, but after e7, it's a very clever move. Queen takes e7. Bishop b3, the significance of the pawn sacrifice becomes clear. Black is hopelessly pinned on f6, and a check on c5 will be met by d4, insisting upon the win of a piece. He in fact played pawn takes b2, and the rook came to e1, and white's advantage is already decisive. Here's a further example of that attack down the f-file, proving very dangerous indeed. Knight c6, castle, knight f6, d3. On this occasion, black wasn't so anxious to stick his king into the teeth of it, so he deferred matters with a6. White played the constructive move queen e1, came knight d4. Presumably black's hoping to take some of the sting out of white's build-up by exchanging off the king-knight. Well, it might be a good idea to take on d4 now for white, as we'll see in a later game in a similar position. In fact, here he just dropped back, bishop b3, maintaining a very solid structure, and the pushes with e5 or f5 are in the air. Black played e6, f5. Queen to e7. Clearly, black was determined in this game not to castle kingside. Exchange on e6. Now the f-file is open. Black took back with queen bishop, accelerating his development. But after knight takes d4 and the recapture, a clear problem for black is the weakness of the d4 pawn, which white is just threatening to capture at the moment. There's going to be a long-term liability whatever happens. After knight to d7, it's queen f2, it's on Prix again. And black came up with a clever way of defending it, knight to e5. The idea being to play knight to c6 next move. But the player of the white pieces in this game was a man called David Rumens. We felt it only right and proper to include at least one of his victories in a survey of the opening. This is from 1981 against Mark Ginsburg of America, and ended in sparkling fashion. Knight takes d4, which black thought was impossible because of knight g4, when the queen cannot move because of the capture of the knight on d4 with check. Didn't bother David, just took the bishop on e6. Knight takes f2, knight takes g7 check, and it becomes apparent white's going to get three pieces for this queen, because if king f8 now, then simply bishop to h6 with a devastating attack. So black sought sanctuary on d7, but the game didn't last much longer. Rook takes f2, if the f-pawn moves, the knight will jump out to e6. Rook a f8, bishop d2, King c8, Rook a f1. We're taught that 3 pieces are better than the queen. They certainly are here. White advantage is overwhelming and black resigned.
This is Grandmaster Damian Lemos here for onlinechesslessons.net. First of all, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you would like to receive more free chess videos from us, you can just click the subscribe button below. I would also highly recommend signing up for my free mail course, the 10 Grandmaster Secrets to Dominate Chess. During this exclusive course from onlinechesslessons.net, I'll share with you my own Grandmaster shortcuts to effective attacking, defending and growth hacks to improving your chess without complicated books or memorization. So sign up by clicking the sidebar on the right, and I know you won't be disappointed. Once more, this is Damian for onlinechesslessons.net, and I'll see you in my videos. Thank you.